Summer Training Institute. As a professional member of this institute, she continues to receive training and professional development in the field of college admissions and learning disabilities. Bettina is constantly on the move, visiting colleges, going on campus tours, and meeting with admissions officers. It is now my pleasure to turn things over to Bettina, who's going to guide you in getting started on the college application. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for having me for the second time on this topic. Thank you everybody for coming and for your patience. We were a few minutes late, but thank you for staying there and waiting for us. So our topic today is the college application essay. I love to talk about this topic because it really allows the student, and this is the part where the student can shine and the student can really show their personality to the colleges. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the role of the essay within the college application. And we're going to talk, I'm going to tell you my best 10 tips for an awesome college essay. So I like to think about a college application like, I like to think of it as a puzzle where there's different parts that interact. And that really shows an image of the person, of the student as a whole. This is a holistic application in this country. We have holistic application. So the essay is a very important part, and we're going to talk about that. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to show you a little presentation that I have on our topic for today. Let me see, I'm going to, 1 second, put this here. Okay, so I like to take a step back for a second and talk about the essay as part of a whole, part of a whole, as part of the big puzzle. And why is it so important? We have 5 different variables, or 5 different pillars of the application. This is what we call, as again, a holistic review of an applicant. The first part that I'm going to talk about is, what do people think about the student? And that comes in, that information is conveyed through the letters of recommendation. This is somebody who really is familiar with a student, is working with a student every day, and that is the person who is going, these two people are going to talk about what they think about the student. The second variable is very important, the transcript, the long-term academic performance, how the student performs in a marathon of 4 years. What kind of classes has he taken? Did he take rigorous classes? Did he choose to take not rigorous classes? How did he do in the rigorous classes? And how is his trajectory during those 4 years? Did he start strong? Did he start weak and got stronger? That tells a lot about the student, and that really is what's going to allow the student to have for his application to be considered in that particular college. The other component, the SAT and ACT, that is the short-term academic performance, and talks a little bit about the potential of the student, and talks a little bit about whether the student was able to prepare for that test or not. And there's a lot of controversy nowadays. This is not a topic for today, but there's a lot of controversy about the SAT and the ACT and what kind of information it provides to the colleges. And this will always be viewed, the SAT and the ACT, compared to the academic performance, compared to the transcript. So for another day. What does the student do in their free time? And that is the extracurriculars activity. What does it choose to do on a weekend or after school? That also informs, what do they like? What kind of student is it? But now I have it in a big circle because that's our topic today. Who is the student as a person? And that comes across in the essay. What makes him tick? What do they like? What is important to them? What are their values? Very important for a college. What are the values of this kid? How has he grown throughout these 4 years of high school? That is the essay. Why is this so important? Colleges want to know what kind of person they're bringing to campus. This is a residential program. They're going to have this person as part of the community. They want to know what kind of member of the community that student is going to be, and that is why they look at the essay so carefully. Now, what is happening this year? In 2020. As we know, we have a different reality this year, and the transcript is affected by this because we have students, some schools that are pass-fail. We have different performance for our 11th graders. This spring, they were not able to be in school. Their performance is going to be slightly different. The short-term academic performance, there's a lot going on, as you probably know, from the SAT and ACT. Are they going to take it? Are they not going to take it? Half of our colleges are test optional now, and probably more to come. So all these are variables that are changing this year. What is the student going to do in their free time? The extracurricular activities have changed as well. They were not able to attend their soccer or their lacrosse, et cetera, that's happened in the spring. So I have students coming to my practice and saying, what are the colleges how are they going to evaluate me? And that's a big question right now. I've been to many, many webinars and talking to a lot of colleges, and it's a big question for everybody. The two variables that we have that are really there and intact are still the letters of recommendation, what do other people think about the student, and the essay. The others are all skewed, are all different than they were other years. So I think this year the essay will have a lot of weight in the application. So we're going to jump now into the 10 tips for a great Common App essay. And please, ask your questions along the way. I'm going to try to answer them all at the end, so I'm going to go a little bit fast. But please, ask questions. I love to talk about this. I have read hundreds of essays, and I've seen all kinds of wonderful essays and others that need help. But anyway, so the first tip: don't use your essay to repeat your resume. The resume has a role in the college application process. That is not the essay. The essay should not be about what you did, what you accomplished, how many prizes or how many things you won, etc. That is elsewhere in your application. Tell me something that cannot be found. The college, the application is like, as I said, like a puzzle, and the different pieces have different roles. We use the supplements for some information. We use the resume for some information. We use the essay for some information. We use the activities for different information. So don't overlap. Try to use these opportunities as different for different types of information about yourself. And of course, show another dimension about your personality. And here I would like to mention an example of a student of mine. I'm working with this student this year. He is a math genius. I mean, math and science are his very, very strong subjects. So we want a different side of him. We want to see, an incident that made him grow, that made him view things in a different way, something that happened in his life that was a turning point, that has nothing to do with math and science. He has plenty of that in the rest of the application. So we're going to focus on something completely different. Now, tip number 2, be individual and unique. Very important. There's other students that are going to have your grades. There's other students that are going to have your test scores and even your activities. No one is going to feel and think and have the experiences that you have. So use that. Find the extraordinary in ordinary things. So I just have to tell this. I have a student that she spoke about a chair. And that was a topic of the essay, a chair. This is a student who ended up going to Yale. But aside from that, she really was able to connect and find the extraordinary in something so ordinary as a chair. So I just put it out there because it doesn't have to be a grandiose topic. It doesn't have to be something spectacular. It can be something from everyday life. They know the student is 17 years old, and most students at that age have just a normal life. So you don't have to be grandiose. Keep it real. Colleges want to get to know you and your personality through the essay. Very real, very like 17-year-old. Be honest, and you don't need to be the star. I encourage students to show a little bit of being humble without diminishing themselves, but show that you are a sensitive person. Show that you feel, that you have a sensitivity. The story should be uniquely yours. And here I put the example. I always tell my students when we're working on the essay, if I find the essay on the sidewalk and I pick it up and read it, I have to know that that is you without having your name on it, without having your signature. It has to be really your unique story. When it feels like, wow, this is me, that is a good essay. Tip number 3, we're going fast here. Show, don't tell. And I'm sure you've heard the show, don't tell. That's like a famous quote. And what does this mean? What does this show, not tell me? Show, don't tell mean? So here I have an example. Cold, don't tell me, show me. Your character pulls her collar up, tightens her scarf, shoves her hand deep into her pockets, turns her face away from the biting wind. That is showing. Don't tell me your character is cold. Say it in a different way. I have another example here. Tired. He can yawn, groan, stretch. His eyes look puffy. His shoulders could slump. Another character might say, again, these are examples of the show, don't tell. Very important. And students are not used to this. So this is new to them. The Common App essay is something very different to what they've written before. I've had, in school, you have the typical sequence of, the hypothesis, etc. This is different. This is a different structure. So it takes a different training and a different focus. Make the reader part of the experience. Very important. And that is what the show, don't tell does. It grabs the reader. Don't just recount, reflect. The college admissions reps, they want to see that a student has the capacity to go deep, to reflect upon something. That is maturity. So it's very important that you not only say what happened, but reflect upon it. It is not about, I always say, it's not about what you do. It's about how you think. What happened to you might happen to many people, but your lens is unique. Be succinct when describing facts. That's one very common issue that I have with my students. They talk about what happened, and then this happened, and this one said this, and this one did not say that, and then I went here, I went there. That's irrelevant. We have 650 words. The most important thing is not what happened, is what you made of it. How you incorporated what you learned to your life and what you did about it. So I always say 1/3 of the essay is what happened, 2/3 is what you did about it. So I start, deleting when they are really describing facts and going on and on and on with the facts. Keep it short, keep it basic. Think outside the box, always. Try to be unique without, we're going to go there, without trying to be funny or without try to, have your lens, your unique lens. Now, tip number 5, use your voice. Very important topic, very important tip. Flex your vocabulary. What do I mean by that? Use words that maybe are a little bit unusual, or that even that you made up, it's okay. I have students that kind of make up words or use their vocabulary a little bit differently. That is fine. This is a creative piece. I totally allow that, as long as it's not something, of course, that is something that you cannot say. But I like, if you don't have a unique or unusual topic, using unusual vocabulary might make it very special. But you're walking a fine line with that, so be careful. Don't artificially pump up your vocabulary. And this is something that students try to impress and use words like these that you see on the PowerPoint that are basically, I'm just making a joke. I just like, this is an exaggeration. But use words that are just like in any other essay. You don't have to look pompous. It doesn't necessarily make you look good. Just make not vocabulary like you would use just to chat with a friend, obviously. But you don't have to show off that way. There's no need. Avoid cliches. And here I put some examples, but that is also a very common thing, and we try to avoid that. And get personal. Get really personal. It's very important. Dig deep. It doesn't have to be a soap opera, but go to your heart. I always tell my students, go deeper. Go deeper. Not in the drama necessarily, but go deeper into your feelings. What did you think about it? What were your needs? Really go there, because that's going to make your essay much more powerful. Tip number 6, avoid bad essay topics. And yes, I think there are some bad essay topics, and different consultants consider some topics differently. I mean, bad or not bad, but that, by the way, is a picture I try to depict, a person who reads essays all day long, and when they see a topic that they don't like, maybe that's their expression. But anyway, the death of a pet, that I try to avoid, because that's such a common topic. It's one of the big bad things that happen to kids, and they like to talk about it. I put absolutely not. However, this year I had a student that talked about very tangentially about the death of a pet, but the main character was her. It was not the pet who died. It was just like a very kind of subtle detail on the side. It was her process that we were talking about. The death of the pet was just like a little teeny detail, but I tried to avoid that one. Sports, the type of essay that, we were winning and I thought that we were going to win and I was going to see that golden cup, and then suddenly we lost, and what I learned, we hear it all the time. This is such a common, I try to avoid it. I try to go for something much deeper in the person. The defeat, the victory, that's like very, very common. How lucky you are. Well, that's a little bit of an issue, I think, because we don't know who's on the other side, who's reading the essay. So I like to be a little bit sensitive that way. We don't know if that person is lucky or not, like the student is. So I try to avoid that. Illegal activity, of course, that is a big no-no. And you would be surprised how many students mention things like that you're like, no, you're not talking about that. Do good experiences. You know, like, oh, look how good I am. That's a little bit, I don't know. I prefer not to. I would not say absolutely not. It depends a little bit on the essay, but the essay is a different, has a different objective, really. Not about like, oh, look how good I am. It's great. That's a different part of the application. You can show your community service, your involvement in your community, which is very important, but I don't think it's the main topic. The most important person in your life, that is a tricky one, because yes, I want to talk about my grandmother, who was so important to me, and she's wonderful, and all the things that she taught me. And I've heard my colleagues from the college side saying, you know, I wish I could admit the grandmother, because she sounds awesome. So we have to be a little careful with that. Yes, it's important to, you know, mention something, but you know, just keep that in mind, that you are the one who is the protagonist usually in this essay. COVID-19, there's a lot of talking about COVID-19 and whether to use it in the essays or not. And I've heard, interestingly, from counselors from high schools saying absolutely do not use COVID-19 as a topic. I have not heard that from the reps from admissions. I hear that, yes, they know it's going to be very common. They don't discourage it, but they don't encourage it. You know, I've heard all kinds of opinions on this. There is, and probably you know this, there is on the Common App a question about COVID-19 in the section that is there anything else that you want to add to your application? Please mention it here. This year, there's a question is about how was COVID for you? Is there anything you want to mention here? It's optional, so you don't necessarily have to fill it out. This question will probably still be there next year, I would assume, because, you know, some students have been affected and they're now in 10th grade. But I know it's going to be quite common of a topic. My students, I don't have any students that are doing COVID-19, but I wouldn't say absolutely not. This is a this is the biggest event that has happened in the last, you know, whatever, 70 years or something. And definitely in the life of the students for many of them. So I would not say absolutely not, but just be aware that there's a supplement for that, and it's going to be a common question, a common topic. Tip number 7, grab the reader's attention with the first sentence. And that, I'm sure you have read about this. I apologize for the pictures, a bit strange, but I wanted to grab your attention with a photo. So I want to give some examples here. It was a bright, cold day in April. The clocks were striking 13. So what does the reader think? Cold day in April, yeah, okay. Northern Hemisphere, okay. Clock striking, what? What, 13? Wait a minute. The people who read these essays are probably exhausted. They read for 12 or 13 hours a day during the application season. Wake them up. Slapping them in the face with something that that's going to grab their attention right from the beginning. I really stress this. I have another example. They shot the white girls first. The reader thinks shooting girls because of their race, or is it incidental? Where is this? What is happening? Another example, I write this sitting in the kitchen sink. That's the very first sentence. The reader, the sink, writing, how, why, what is going on there? So as you see, these are the first sentence, boom. The reader is right away like thinking, what's going on here, right? That is a very common thing. We don't want to start like this, you know, when I was 5 years old, da, 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 da. It's a little bit like we like that first punchline. Avoid starting with a quote. That is a personal preference. I feel that that has been done so much. There's nothing wrong with that, but I avoid it because I feel like it's there, like something like, well, I didn't know how to start, so boom, here it is, a quote. Um, I am not a fan of quotes. Again, there's nothing wrong with it, but I encourage my students to just be themselves and not use quotes. Um, Tip number 8, be mindful of your tone. Direct, but not too casual. I don't like slang words, curse words, obviously not. Um, Watch your spelling, revise your spelling, and be clear. You don't have to be pompous. Be clear and be respectful. These are the people who are thinking, do I want this student on my campus? So you don't have to be somebody who you're not, but just be mindful that this is what this is the job of the essay, for them to see, is this kid coming to my community? Do I want this? Funny. Many students want to be funny. I'm okay with one funny line or two, but a whole essay that tries to be funny usually doesn't work. So I discourage students to do that. Avoid sounding very formal. It will appear like kind of stiff, and stiff is not what you want in an essay. Okay, tip number 9, revise. I cannot say it enough. It's so important. Sleep on it. Don't do this at the last minute. I am actually working with my students on the Common App essay right now. We have the prompts. There's no reason why you cannot start now. To have the time to brainstorm, to have the time to revise, to sleep on it, to look at it a week later. This is an important, this is what's going to show who you are in front of colleges. You need to put a lot of thought. And the fact that it's short, that is 650 words, does not make it easier. Don't be afraid to change topics. I have students who say, you know what, I've been working on this and now it just doesn't feel right. I want to talk about something else. Yes, that's fine. Don't get stuck with something just because you decided it some time ago. You start again. It's okay. Don't rely on spell check, and you would be surprised how many students do that. It doesn't necessarily work. You have to have it revised by somebody who speaks the language perfectly. I've been working on essays for a long time. I have another set of eyes, always looking at. I have an editor looking at my essays. I discuss things with my editor. Very important. Read the essay out loud. That's an awesome tip. Anything that you write, read it out loud and see how it sounds. You would be surprised how many things you catch when you're reading out loud. Seek qualified second opinions, but 1 or 2. Do not show it. I don't think it's a good idea to be showing it to like your neighbor and your friend and your cousin and your mom and your this and that. Everybody will have a different opinion, you're going to be very confused. People are going to tell you different things, correct different things. And the worst part for me, in my view, is that it loses your voice. And that's really important. And it sounds like everybody and nobody. So I would pick 1 or 2 people and just stick to that. Tip number 10, and we're getting already to the last one. This I would like you to keep in mind. Imagine how a person reading your essay will feel and what he will think about your essay and about you. Does your essay show growth? Very important. Does it show self-reflection? Super important. Does it show that you look at things in a deep and conscientious way, and that you are a thoughtful person, that you that you are able to look inside, that you look at yourself from a perspective. Very important, because it shows maturity. Agency, does it show a person who is able to make decisions, to able to be independent? That's college readiness, being independent, making your own choices. That's being ready for college. So colleges look at that. And a likable person, a person who's going to make friends, who's going to be part of the community, who's going to be active, who's going to be open, who's not going to be just in a corner, with the books, but he's going to be part of the community. Is going to bring something to campus, bring something interesting, bring something, a different perspective. That is what the reader is looking for. They are not looking at, what you are doing, what you are, what you're telling them only, in terms of what you did in the essay, but what you think, how you think, and how you elaborate a topic, and really your lens on your life. So we arrived to the Q&A, and I hope you have questions now. For me, I don't know if we have time, but I hope we do, because I love questions and I love to talk about college. So I'm going to unshare the screen now. And okay. Let me see if we have questions. There's a lot of, I can hear you. Is there a question? I can't see. Q&A. What if your child would not show you their essay? Well, I must say, most of my students don't show the essay to the parents. I mean, I work with teenagers all day long, and I've had teenagers of my own. And as you know, the parent is the last person that, unfortunately, that they trust and they want to open up to. So usually the students work with me or with a teacher or with another person to guide them. That is very, very common. Usually most of my students, it's rare that they would show the essay to a parent, unfortunately, but that's kind of what it is. If you have not had a major issue related to COVID-19, would you recommend answering that question or leaving it blank? Interesting. There's many different ways to be affected by COVID-19, even though maybe your parent did not, have, a financial issue, or, I like to talk about how they reflect upon it. What is their take? Remember that these are all, for me, this is the way I use, I view the common application. I see it as different opportunity to talk about yourself. So as such, this is another opportunity. And everybody has been affected. And some kids absolutely don't want to talk about it, and that's totally fine. It's not a must. But there's always something that they can bring to the table, or some kind of reflection that they can talk about. What if a student is very logical and math oriented, and deep feelings don't flow naturally? I have to say, I work with students that some students that have learning disabilities, for example, or on the autism spectrum even, and it's very, very hard to be introspective. So brainstorming with them takes several hours, and really it's really an exercise. I have exercises that I use with students to kind of pull out that feeling and that information. But it is difficult. I must say it's not easy for a student that is kind of very logical to really, but we get there. We do. It requires a lot of time and a lot of patience but we get there. We do. Um, the length, what should you say about the length of the essay? I have to put my glasses here. The length of, there's a maximum of 650 words. Do not pass the 650 words, absolutely not. And I think it will allow you, but it's not a good, it doesn't reflect well upon the student, means like they're not following directions. I would say between 600 and 650 words is a good length for the essay. Again, very important to focus on what you did about the topic, not only the topic itself, right? Or your lens on the topic, your view, your conclusions, etc. And 650 words, you'd be surprised how much you can say. I mean, we really work very intensely with the essay. We sometimes do 5, 6, 7 drafts until it's really what the student wants to say, and it's succinct and it's meaningful and powerful. How do I write about something I have overcome? Well, you know, I have students that they have issues that happen to them or things that they want to talk about. For example, I've had the other day a student wanted to talk about their parents' divorce, but he was still in the middle of it. He didn't have a perspective on it. So that was too early. You can talk about a challenge if you have some perspective and you were able to grow from it. If you're in the middle of it, that's not the time. Not good for your Common App essay yet. So how you write something I have overcome. I don't know if that answers the question, but and what did you do about it? How did you overcome it? What does that look like in your life right now? If you wrote I am in the kitchen sink, what would come next? I love that question. You could be writing about anything. You are just saying, I am writing this from my kitchen sink. There must be a reason, right? Why you are there and you're not in your desk, or why there could be any kind of story from that. What about writing about overcoming a disability? Absolutely. I have students writing about that. My daughter is more likely to choose science. Do you think she had better ask her physics teacher rather than her Spanish teacher to write the recommendation letter? She's an A+ on both bases. Okay, even if it's not the topic, but it's okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about recommendations. I ask my students to ask for the recommendations from teachers that know them well. It doesn't have to have an A+, as long as they know their effort, their work ethics, their how they study, etc., etc. That is the most important thing. So that's kind of my first thing that I ask my students. What is your view on the problem-solving questions on the Common App? Is this one that is a way to differentiate a student? Do my students answer this question? Also, can you give a good example of an answer for this type of question? I assume you're talking about a supplement. On the problem-solving question. Oh, on the Common App. The problem, a student that, I don't necessarily always start with a prompt. I know that some students prefer. In my brainstorming, I start with like, what do you want to talk about? I already know my students, so we already had that conversation. But a way of student to answer how to I don't think it's to differentiate as to problem solving, a problem that you want to solve. That's, what is a problem that you would like to solve, a topic that you would like to, and that talks about their values. And that is your values have to come through in your essay. So that's another way to phrase that question, in my view. Can I talk about solving issues at the high school as a leader in the, yes, definitely. What are good topics? Wow, there's many good topics. I have students talking about experiences, about something that they overcame. Sometimes it's a collage of different experiences that talk about who they are. That's a little more complex in the structure of the essay, but not everybody has gone through challenges. So there's different structures for essays for different types of topics. How to introduce a topic, essay topic, and start with a attention grabber opening sentence. I'm going to give you another tip now. I start with talking about the topic. I do the introduction and the conclusion I do last. And this is a little tip that I have, a little secret sauce, but I find it much easier to just start writing, and then you're going to do the grabbing, the introduction and the conclusion. How much weight do the essays have in the overall application? That's a great question. I think they have a lot of weight, honestly. Again, this is what's going to set you apart. Again, many people are going to have your scores and your SATs, your SATs and your ACTs and your grades, etc. Your values and your views are unique. And I think that the colleges will look at that very carefully. Somebody asked how many times they should take the SAT or ACT. How many times depends. I don't know if you're a 10th grader or 11th grader. At this point, we have few opportunities for the 11th graders. I usually ask, usually my students take it twice. By the third time, they already plateau in one particular, it doesn't come up after a while. That's their mark, usually by the third one. So they take two, usually. And you should look into whether to take the SAT or ESCT. I would check them out first. What if you don't take tests? Good question. As we know, more and more colleges will be test optional. With my students, I encourage them to study and take the test. I don't want to be in the situation ever where students change their minds, and sometimes they want to apply to a college that requires the test, and I don't want to be taking it out of the list just because they didn't do the test. And it might be a very good test. I mean, it gives you more options. So my students are all taking the tests. That would be my recommendation. I had issues. It will be a recording afterwards. I assume, yes. I'm not the host, so I'm not sure, but you can always, I hope I'll have a recording and I can send it to you. You can always reach me. Weil College Advising is my firm. I'm happy to chat or give you recordings. I have other recordings also on my website, so happy to share that. As an 11th grader, I have finished my ACT. However, what is your view on SAT subject tests? I'm guessing I have to take them in August, October. I have heard that test optional isn't test optional in certain zip codes. That is a little bit true, yes. Test optional is complicated because this test optional and test blind, it's not the same. So test optional, I would take the test anyway. The SAT tools, the subject tests, are less and less important. Nowadays, they're mostly like, if you do well, like a feather in your hat to say, look how good I am, look how proficient I am in this topic. I don't send an SAT tool unless it's 750 or above, because otherwise you're not showing that proficiency. It is required in last year was required only in a handful of schools, and this year will not be required because of the test dates. So again, it can be something to show proficiency, not going to be required. If the college doesn't require the test, but you have taken it, should you submit the test? Depends. When a test is at your, is going to reaffirm your who you are as a student, definitely send it. If it's going to be below who you know, your level of proficiency, or your level of your academic level, so then don't. So a standardized test, what is it? A standardized measure to compare it with the school, with your GPA or your grades in school. As we know, there's grade inflation. Not every school, not every high school grades in the same way. So this is a standard. This is, everybody takes the same one and they are compared. So colleges compare this. They see, oh, this student had fantastic SATs and low grades. Well, what does that mean? Or the vice versa, right? So it's a measure to compare your grades with that. Even at Georgetown hasn't said much yet in terms of what they will do. I spoke to them actually yesterday was Monday. Yes, I spoke to them yesterday. They're going to release, all their policies in the end of June. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of changes, and you'll see a lot of colleges that are going to go test optional. I have not seen that many go test blind though. And then there's also not only test optional, test blind, and there's a third that is that instead of a test, you can send something else like APs, etc. That's the case in NYU and Brandeis, etc. Better to send SAT2 subject tests or to take APs and send those, whatever you can. I mean, this is something, it's about sending something that is going to show proficiency. So whatever you can and you have and you're able to send is going to be important, and read. Everything is read. But again, I mean, going back to the essay, that essay has to complement somehow the other parts. And your supplements are very important. So really don't underestimate that. That is hugely important. Colleges look at the supplements very carefully. And the supplements are already, some of them came out, some are coming out shortly. Let me see. Are there specific areas of a college website you think I should visit? Not only the website, I would look into other resources as well. You want to have different perspectives on a college. There are, you obviously can do many of the tours and information sessions nowadays on the websites, but there are other resources as well. You want to see definitely the academic part. You want to see how that curriculum is organized. If they have an open curriculum and distribution curriculum, what are the requirements, what are the gen ed requirements, etc. You wanted to know how difficult or easy it is to change majors. 80% of the students change majors, so you want to know what the scenario is. If your program is a pre-professional program, if it's a liberal arts curriculum, I mean, those things you want to know before coming into a college. You want to see what kind of student goes there. You want to talk to current students. I have my students always talk to current students. I connect them. We make a list of questions to ask. It's not just, hey, do you like the college or not? It's just like really specific questions that we ask them. And we work on that together so that they have more material to ask for. So it's very important to do your homework about the college. At the level of the time when you're doing your college list. I already I'm done with the college list with my students, with my juniors, but we continue to research on it, and I guide them on, you know, what to look for. Okay, then, do you have college forums on other websites you would suggest? Yes. I suggest Induc. I like Campus Reel, which is, you know, usually videos from students. Reddit has opinions from students. So it's just a matter of like browsing a little bit in the internet, and you can find several forums to guide to. What about doing interviews? Yes, absolutely. Interviews are when they're offered, but there's different types of interviews. There's informational interviews, and there is evaluative interviews. So that's something that you might want to know first, and definitely prepare for that. I see that. Okay. The interviews, you want to know if you're going to do it with an alum, you're going to do it with an admissions rep, or you're going to do it with a student. So definitely, if they offer interviews, absolutely. I prepare my students for the interviews. For, you know, we do role plays, we practice, and it's part of, definitely, for some schools, for some colleges, it's very important. So I don't know if we have still questions or not. Lisa, are you there? Okay. I don't know, maybe she's not here. Anyway.
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I don't know if we have more questions or not. I think we're good. I think we're done.
I think you went through everything in the Q&A. At one point, I did ask people, we're putting questions in chat, but
let me know if there's anything else.
So everything, I think you've answered everything. If anyone has any more questions, let us know now. Otherwise, we will thank you for your time. Thank you so much for your patience. Again, I am so sorry. Technology, love it, hate it. Bettina, thank you so much for your insight and for everything, obviously, the essay and beyond. I hope everyone learned something, and I think we're good. I don't see any more questions coming in, so I will say good night and thank you to everybody.